You know, it's funny, when these Hunger Games books were first coming out, I thought Mockingjay was about someone named Jay being made fun of. I was like, who's Jay? Why are they making fun of Jay? Poor Jay. It was years ago. In any case. The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1. So The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1 is Part 1 of 2 because if we've learned anything is that the last book in a saga of books, when adapted to the big screen, needs to be 2 movies. I mean, why not? Why not? And in Mockingjay Part 1, Katniss is... Alright, that's kind of a spoiler alert for the last movie. If you haven't seen the last movie, it's gonna kind of spoil the end of that. No spoilers for Mockingjay Part 1 in this video. This is spoiler-free shit. But for Catching Fire, you get it. Katniss is hanging out in District 13 because it was bombed to shit back in the day, but still, people are there and they're like this rebellion. And they've been waiting for someone, a figure of hope, the Mockingjay. And now she's arrived. That was one of the things I liked about this movie. This movie ultimately is a huge departure from the last 2 movies. The first one was like Battle Royale. Second one was a better version of the first one. And now in this movie, there's no Hunger Games whatsoever. It's about propaganda and shit. What I mean by that is the Capitol is doing propaganda against the freedom fighters in District 13 to like say they're dicks. And this is what dicks do. So they're like, well, now we have Katniss, so we have to do propaganda against them and show that she's a symbol of hope. You know, it was actually really cool. The last book has been made into 2 movies. In that, it's not gonna have a compression of really cool shit to see for 2 hours. Sometimes there's some downtime and you're like, all right, well, you guys can get moving now. I get this bonding moment at the lake, but come on, there's a rebellion out there. However, I still dug this movie because the political intrigue was really cool. I like that. I like political chess where it's like, oh, it's not just, you know, firing guns and just storming the castle. They do a smear campaign, you do a smear campaign. You don't really know where everyone's coming from. You gotta think that shit through. This put the whole Hunger Games story at another level for me. I really got what people have been freaking out about for the past few years. Granted, the bummer is this movie has so many characters thrown at you that no one really shines, except Katniss. We're already on Katniss' side because it's Jennifer Lawrence and everyone loves her. Finnick, the coolest character in Catching Fire, is in the movie briefly. There's one scene with Liam Hemsworth, Gale. I forgot his name even. It's a really tense moment. It's actually a really cool scene. It has a lot of tension, but I was like, I don't really care that much about Gale to really give a shit about him. I like the intensity of the scene. That was really cool, but if I cared about Gale, it would have been compounded. And this movie does suffer from what the best of movies are going to suffer from if you do something like this, which is take 1 book and make it into 2 movies, which is, yeah, it feels like solid build-up to what looks to be a great finale, but it's still the build-up. It's like getting into a hot rod and going, come on, start, yeah, and then turning it off going, all right, it starts, it's good. Come on, let's go. Why are you still on the hot rod? Come on. You're just like, I want to drive it. I want it to go to the destination. You don't really get that. I mean, even Harry Potter suffers from that. Deathly Hallows Part 2, awesome. Deathly Hallows Part 1, still awesome in its own right, but let's be honest, if I watch Part 1, I'm going right into Part 2, which is probably the point. But as Part 1 stands on its own, it's only really relevant if it's with Part 2. In the end, The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1, I really dug it. It actually approaches the Hunger Games world and story from another angle from the other 2 movies, and that put it up on another level for me. Still love the character Katniss. There are a couple moments where I was like, oh man, I don't know if I'm tearing up or I'm just getting that feeling, but it was a really effective moment. I love the look behind the curtain of what it takes to ultimately run a rebellion against an evil empire in a propaganda-ish kind of way, not just guns blazing kind of way. I will say The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1 is worth buying on Blu-ray. So The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1, have you seen it? What did you think about it? Whatever you think, comment below, let me know. And as always, if you like what you've seen here and you want to see more, click right here to see more.